dying unexpectedly after a loving night with her husband. A 911 call, a seizure turned to cardiac arrest, CPR, her husband, a firefighter, performing resuscitation efforts. A hero turned grieving widower. And for a moment, just like the first responders, you may have thought that's all there was. But this is not a case decided on first impressions. This is a case decided on ethics. And when you look closely, when you look beneath the surface, the story the defendant told falls apart. It falls apart for a number of reasons. But it's proven blatantly untrue based on Marcy's body and his body. Now, the first thing that I want to address is the autopsy. What does her body tell us? Her body is going to tell us what happened to her. So you'll recall the testimony of Dr. Burns and the injuries that she detailed. It was pretty extensive testimony. But she detailed that there was hemorrhaging to both carotid sheaths, just below the jaw, that there was a hemorrhage to the esophagus on one side, that there was a large contusion to the back of her head, starting here at the bony prominence and extending about 6 centimeters down, and that she had bilateral bruising behind the ears. And behind one of the ears, there was something that appeared kind of like an abrasion. So you'll recall that she testified that the bilateral bruising behind the ears can occur two ways, right? So it can occur either as an internal injury by the compression of the jugular. So the congestion caused by the compression of the jugular, causing the hemorrhaging behind the ears. Or it can be from external trauma, or it can be from both. These are not injuries caused by CPR. These are not injuries caused by a seizure. These are not injuries caused by the eye gel or the bag valve mask, and they are certainly not injuries caused by massage. They are exactly what you see when force is applied to the sides of the neck. When blood flow to the brain is deliberately cut off by the compression of the carotids. The medical evidence tells you how Nancy died, which was a vascular strangulation. But what happened before and after is important. That tells us why. It's the motive, right? So people act for reasons. And we don't need to prove motive to prove a crime. You're not going to see that in the elements. But in this case, the motive is glaringly apparent. The defendant's marriage was deteriorating. And he was blaming Marcy for the deterioration of his marriage, just as he did in court. The defendant was deeply involved in an affair. Call it an affair is a little bit of an understatement. This was an obsession. He was meeting her family. He was introducing her to his family. They were making plans for the future. They were discussing marriage. They were discussing buying property together in Goldendale. They were talking about their new life together. He was telling his friends about trips that he planned to take them. He had retained an attorney. You see that in the text messages. And he had planned to move out. But divorce meant financial consequences. Because you'll recall the testimony from Casey Jones and Katie Linton, where they went through the worksheet, right? That was with Casey Jones. And they plugged in his salary and Marcy's salary and the number of years that they'd been married. And he determined that he was going to have to pay alimony indefinitely. And he changed his clothes and left work early. He was so upset. And Katie Linton tells you that she was asking him about the divorce. He said, I can't, I'm stuck. His financial situation hasn't changed. In fact, it's arguably getting worse, as you see in the text messages. Now, the timeline in this particular case matters. It tells us the how. So in this case, starts a number quite a while earlier. It starts actually in July when he meets up with Cynthia for the first time, after they rekindle their relationship. But for purposes of this timeline, we're going to start on December 13th. So we're talking about 3 weeks prior to Marcy's death. December 13th, they have a pretty big fight. We read most of it to you. You'll have the text messages that you'll be able to review during deliberations. But Marcy's telling Kevin, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm really tired of being berated. You have stated your feelings and I hear you. You haven't said one nice thing. Give me 2 weeks to find somewhere to go. The next day, December 14th, Marcy has a squad search for apartments for rent in Washington. She knows the marriage is on the way out. Presumably around Christmas, he's writing these Christmas cards that you have. Detective Arvizu already read them to you, but just highlight one little portion for you here. From the Christmas tree, to the food we prepare, to the home we make, to the decorations we display, our love will be present everywhere. Next year, 2024, will be our year. We will be together celebrating every day with love and understanding of what it means for you and I to be together. Our story will ring in the new year, loud for all to hear. I love you, Cynthia. Love forever and always, Kevin. 2024 was going to be their year. That was when it was all happening. And this is how we know there was an actual plan, right? You'll recall in the interview that Mr. West had with law enforcement, they asked him, was there a plan to leave? He says no. That was false. There was a plan, he had retained an attorney, and he had told multiple people when exactly he was moving out. All right, so exhibits 181 and 173 are text messages that you'll have. So on January 3rd of 2024, so we're talking 5 days prior to Marcy's death at this point, the defendant texts Walter Ward, who is Cynthia's mother, that he will be moving out on the 8th and seeing an attorney on the 9th. He's also texting with Paul Person, who is Cynthia's brother-in-law, the same day. And he says, I'm moving out on Monday, which was January 8th. You'll have a calendar to double check. And papers are done on Tuesday, January 9th. I know where I sit. So now we jump to the night prior to Marcy's death, January 7th of 2020 or 2024. Right? And on this day where he's having this amazing night with Marcy and they're making love, he's texting his mistress's mother. Just felt the need to send you a message. Today has been a tough day. I keep thinking about how happy I was yesterday and how we laughed. I want you to know how spiritually connected Cynthia and I are. We have something so incredibly special. Yesterday, talking with you, her and I together felt so great. I can't explain the familiarity and love I have for both of you. You are my family, and I feel like we always have been. Thank you for your love and support. I will never be able to express how much that means to me. I love Cynthia to tears, and I will always give her my all. Love you, Mom. He later asks her, please know how strong we are and that nothing will come between us. I love you so much. And then again later, I'm leaning on you today because I feel so close to you. Cynthia has shared your struggles through life, and I know how strong you are. I don't want to worry my mom, and I need you. I miss Cynthia so much, even though we are so close to being together. Today is hard because I miss her so much. I absolutely ache for her, wishing tomorrow would come. I'm so sorry for leaning on you, but you are someone I so trust and love. And then again later, he texts, again Cynthia's mother, says, I will never let go. This is what he's doing right before he makes love to his wife. So then we have an account from him that she vomits, right? Different times in different interviews, it changes here in testimony. Somewhere between 9:30 and 11 is kind of where we're at. Now, today, he tells you that she vomited, but he went back downstairs and was scrolling on his phone. Why is he changing that? Well, he told you, because the Apple Health data came to light. So now he's got to account for why his phone's moving around a lot. Because it was inconsistent with his story that he told to law enforcement. The Apple Health data didn't match up. So now he's got to tweak it a little bit. So let's look at the Apple Health data, because it's crucial in this case. All right. At 12:09 a.m., after in every interview he said that both of them were asleep, right? Up until today. 12:09 a.m., Kevin's phone logs 55 steps. At 12:10, Marcy's phone logs 86 steps, so they're up together. At 12:20, there's a Safari search on Marcy's phone for Mother of the Bride dresses. That's the last we hear from Marcy's phone before her time. At 1:09, there's a Google search on Kevin's phone for the hotel ledger. And then there's a break in activity where the phone's not moving around. Now, does that mean that they're sedentary? No. It just means that they're not holding the phone, right? Because this isn't a wearable device. They have to actually be carrying the phone around. So there's a break here. We don't know what's happening. It's possible that's when Marcy is killed. 2:11 a.m., his phone logs 143 steps and 2 floors. 2:22 a.m., his phone logs 164 steps and 1 floor. 2:38 a.m., his phone logs 119 steps. 2:48 a.m., his phone logs 128 steps. 3 a.m., his phone logs 457 steps. 3:10, 133 steps. 4:21, 198 steps. And then at 4:27 is when the 911 call starts. There's no steps at 4:27. The steps occurred 6 minutes prior. Now recall from his testimony, he said that he saw her seizing. Right, the phone was plugged in, wasn't moving. He sees her seizing, the dog is whimpering. He runs around to her side of the bed. Gently lowers her to the floor. We saw the demonstration. And then has to go back to his side of the bed to get the phone from the charger and come back over to Marcy to render aid. It doesn't match. At 4:27, the 911 call starts. 1 minute and 50 seconds in, he's saying she's still seizing. 2 minutes, 34 seconds in, he says she's not breathing. 3 minutes, 9 seconds in, she stops seizing. 3 minutes and 22 seconds in, the 911 dispatcher tells him to start CPR. 7 minutes and 20 seconds in, he says he has to go unlock the door. And then 9 minutes, 30 seconds in, you hear the paramedics and the fire arriving. And then the call ends at 4:37 a.m. At 4:39, his phone logs 8 steps. So, unfortunately, this is really what we can know about what was happening. Because we have no report from us, right? We can't ask her when. But the phone told a story. And it was inconsistent with what he had told law enforcement. So we had to change it. All right. After the 8th, after her death, we have at 8 a.m., he starts telling his friend Kevin Belines, one of his best friends, when they're alone, because he acts very different when he has an audience, right? Just like up there, just like in here. But when he's one-on-one with those that are closest to him, his true colors come out. And he tells his best friend, Kevin Belines, I feel bad for not feeling bad. This is approximately 3 hours after his wife was declared deceased. Now, during the day, that same day, he asked Mark Woodland about getting rid of Marcy's things. And he makes the unsolicited comment about how autopsies often come back inconclusive. It wasn't weeks later, as he made it seem during testimony. It was the same day. And again, later that same day, he tells his other best friend, Scott Slocum, that he feels relieved, like a burden has been lifted. Now, during testimony here today, he tells you, I didn't mean about Marcy. Right? I was just talking about the fire department. They were alleviating so many of my concerns. Scott was pretty clear what he was talking about. And he told you. And then at 5:22 p.m. on the day of Marcy's death, he texts again with Cynthia's mother. Cynthia told me you're aware of Marcy's death this morning and how hard it's hit my kids. I want you to know that I'm okay, and I have my mom here and seeing my dad. My daughter has her friends over and I hear laughter. Ted is sucked up tight to my mom, and I was talking with Cynthia. Thank you for your prayers and thank you for your love. Heart emoji, I love you, Mom. And then at 6 p.m., he texts her, I don't need more time because your text messages warm my heart. On the 11th, and again, we don't know what he's actually texting with Cynthia because they're using WhatsApp and it's an end-to-end encryption, so we can't access those. But he's telling her mom quite a bit, right? So we can see a lot of what their communication is between he and Cynthia through these texts with his mom, with her mom. So on the 11th, 3 days after, let's go back. The 9th. So this is the day after Marcy's death. He texts with Cynthia's mother again at 9:16 a.m. We had a good night last night and had some good laughs. Spelling errors from the text. So, Then at 2:20 p.m., he texts her again, thinking about you and want you to know how incredibly close I feel to you. Thank you for accepting me into your life and supporting Cynthia and I right from the start. I'm so deeply in love with her and will always give her my best. She will always feel loved and feel safe and secure. I'm so grateful to be part of your family. Heart emoji, I love you. Heart emoji again. 2 days later, he texts her again. Cynthia has been such a huge support to me. I know it's hard for her, so hard for her not being able to be here and doing more. I want you to know that she is filling me up with so much love that I would never be able to get through this without her. And then he later tells her that he's taking his sister down to see Cynthia so they can finally meet. On the 19th, he texts Cynthia's mother again. Just want to say hi, heart emoji, I love you, so in love with your daughter, heart emoji. Just want you to know we're better than okay, heart emoji, we're great. And then the 20th is the birthday party / gathering, depending on who you ask, for Kevin at his house when Cynthia comes over and is introduced to the kids as Kevin's sister's friend. His plan to replace Marcy with Cynthia without the financial ruin has been successful. But how he's behaving in the aftermath of Marcy's death is important. These are not the actions of a grieving husband. Again, we've already gone through the comments that he made to his friends. Casey Jones also came over that same day. He was showing her the deer butt bottle opener in the garage. She said he was fake crying. Asked how she knew. Well, she'd seen him real cry. There was no tears. Weren't many tears here today either. He literally erases Marcy from his life almost immediately. He removes pictures of her from the walls and hides them. He gets rid of their bedroom furniture. He gets rid of her personal belongings. He deletes her contact from his phone, unless he never had it saved in the first place. He brings his mistress into the home he shared with Marcy in 12 days and introduces her to the children. He deletes incriminating messages from his phone after he has contact with police. There's a number of messages, and you'll have all the text messages. You'll be able to review them during your deliberations. And in those text messages, you can see the dates that they're deleted. A number of them were deleted January 26th. So those weren't deleted to hide them from Marcy. Who was he hiding them from? This is not grief. This is a man who could not be more ready to move on. And he's deleting the messages because he's worried about getting caught. So I want to discuss the jury instructions with you. The judge just read them. There's a number of them. Lawyers like to define things. So it starts with witness credibility, which is a big one in this case, right? Because you've heard from a number of witnesses and you've had conflicting accounts, including the defendants, right? So, maybe. Okay. Let's see if I think that's going to work. And you have these instructions, you'll have them with you. This is jury instruction number 1. Please? Yep. Okay, this tells you how to evaluate the credibility of a witness. So, in considering witness testimony, you consider these things: the opportunity of the witness to observe or know the things that he or she testifies about, the ability of the witness to observe accurately, the quality of the witness's memory while testifying, the manner of the witness while testifying, any personal interest that the witness might have in the outcome or issues. This is kind of a big one in this case. Because many of the people, the witnesses that defense paraded up here, all family members of the defendant. Right? They don't want to see him convicted. Understand. Any bias or prejudice that the witness may have shown, the reasonableness of the witness's statements in the context of all the other evidence, and any other factors that affect your evaluation or belief of a witness in your evaluation of his or her testimony. And there's a separate instruction also that gives you some additional criteria for expert witnesses. All right. I think this is important. And this is, again, in jury instruction number 1, communication. You must reach your decision based on the facts proved to you and on the law given, not on sympathy, prejudice, or personal preference. There's a lot of testimony meant to pull at your heartstrings in this case. But that's not what it's about. It's about the objective evidence, the objective facts. And then, reasonable doubt. Talked about this kind a lot. And you finally get the definition. So, this is jury instruction number 4. A reasonable doubt is one for which a reason exists and may arise from the evidence or lack of evidence. It's such a doubt as would exist in the mind of a reasonable person after fully, fairly, and carefully considering all of the evidence or lack of evidence. If from such consideration you have an abiding belief in the truth of the charge, then you are satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt. We define a lot of things for you. We don't define abiding belief. Submit to you that it is a lasting belief. All right. This is direct versus circumstantial. Talked about this one a little bit in voir dire, about how circumstantial evidence gets a little bit of a bad rap. But this tells you that the law does not distinguish between direct and circumstantial evidence in terms of the weight or value in finding the facts of the case. One is not necessarily more or less valuable than the other. What's the direct evidence in this case, right? So the direct evidence would be the defendant's account. He was the one that perceived it. But this is a perfect example of why that could be flawed and why we need to look at the circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence refers to evidence from which, based on your common sense and experience, not required to check your common sense at the door. In fact, the law tells you to use it. You may reasonably infer something that's at issue in this case. So, there's hemorrhaging on the carotid sheaths. You can reasonably infer that there was some sort of a trauma there, right? There's hemorrhaging to the esophagus. You can reasonably infer that there was a trauma there. All right. There are 2 counts in this case, and it's going to get a little bit confusing, I think, because there's count 1, which is murder in the first degree with premeditation, and then there's count 2, which is murder in the second degree, which is charged under a different theory. So we have premeditated intent for count 1, and for count 2, it's something called felony murder, right? So the defendant engaged in a particular felony that resulted in the death of the person. And you have to consider them separately. So your decision on one should not affect your decision on the other. So let's look at first at count 1. Count 1 is the elements for count 1, jury instruction number 9. So to convict the defendant of the crime of murder in the first degree is charged in count 1. Each of the following elements must be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. First, that on or about January 8th, 2024, the defendant acted with the intent to cause the death of Marcella West. 2, that the intent to cause death was premeditated. 3, that Marcella West died as a result of the defendant's actions. And 4, that any of these acts occurred in the state of Washington. Now, this fourth one is just what gives us our jurisdiction, right? So this is what allows us to prosecute this particular crime because it occurs in the state of Washington. You might have wondered why we were always asking, is that in Clark County, Washington? That's why. And there's no dispute to the date, right? Everyone agrees that it's January 8th, 2024. So really the question before you is whether the defendant acted with the intent to cause the death of Marcella West, Marcy, and whether that intent was premeditated. So you then have to look at those two definitions. We give them both to you. Ten is intent, which is pretty intuitive, I guess. A person acts with intent or intentionally when acting with the objective or purpose to accomplish a result that constitutes a crime. So were you acting with the purpose to cause your death, basically. Premeditation is a little different. And there's this notion that premeditation needs to involve days of planning, weeks of planning, hours of planning. It doesn't. Jury instruction 11 just means premeditated means thought over beforehand. When a person, after any deliberation, forms an intent to take human life, the killing may follow immediately after the formation of the settled purpose, and it will still be premeditated. Premeditation must involve more than a moment and point of time. The law requires some time, however long or short, in which a design to kill is deliberately formed. So, if you have a crime of passion, right, there's an argument, and you shoot someone, maybe that's a murder too, right? Maybe that's not premeditated because it does not involve more than a moment and point of time. It's an immediate act. Strangulation is different. The testimony of the experts, depending on which one you find more credible. Dr. Burt says you typically go unconscious in 5 to 10 seconds, and then you have to maintain that pressure on the carotid arteries for somewhere in the neighborhood of 3, I can't recall her exact range, but the low end of it was 3, so we'll use that. 3 minutes. Maintaining pressure on an unconscious person's carotid arteries for approximately 3 minutes, 2 minutes and 50 seconds, that's premeditation. You could sit in silence for 2 minutes and 50 seconds. That's a while. That's more than a moment and point of time. But there's other evidence for premeditation, the motive, the multiple acts of violence, right? So she testified that this contusion on the back of the head probably wasn't part of the strangulation event, right? I asked her, could it be from this maneuver? She says, no, not likely. So a blow to the head at some point occurs, and then the strangulation. Now, if after full, fair, and careful consideration, you cannot agree as to whether it was premeditated, then, or can agree on the crime generally, right? Then you go to the potential lesser included. So there's a lesser included of murder in the second degree for count 1. And jury instruction number 12 tells you that murder in the second degree is a lesser included of murder in the first degree. Here's the only difference. It's the premeditation. It's the same otherwise. So, same date, defendant acted with intent to cause the death of Marcella West, that she died as a result, and that it occurred in the state of Washington. All right, so that's count one. Count two is a little bit different. Count two is felony murder. You hear about this sometime in like bank robberies or things like that, right? So people go in, they're robbing a bank, one of the participants shoots someone, a security guard, for example, during the execution of the robbery. It's technically murder because they were involved in the commission of a felony at the time. But in this case, this is also felony murder because the underlying felony is the assault in the second degree, which is assault by strangulation. So, let's try to straighten it out a little bit. Okay. It's not working out particularly well, but close enough. All right. So here's the elements, a little bit crooked, for the felony murder count two, murder in the second degree. Different than the lesser included for count one, which is also murder in the second degree, which is not why this gets a little bit confusing. So for count two, again, same date, January 8th, 2024, defendant committed assault in the second degree, with the defendant causing the death of Marcella West in the course and in furtherance of such crime, and that she was not a participant in the crime of assault in the second degree. She's not like a co-defendant or something along those lines, and that any of these acts occurred in the state of Washington. So the crux really is, what is assault in the second degree? Pretty straightforward. Jury instruction 17. Person commits the crime of assault in the second degree when he or she assaults another by strangulation. Okay? He does not have to intend to cause the death for count two. He only has to intend to assault her by strangulation. So we then have to define for you what an assault is. It's an intentional touching of another person that's harmful or offensive. It's offensive if the touching would offend an ordinary person who is not unduly sensitive. Certainly, pushing on someone's neck, putting your arms around someone's neck, whatever the mechanism is. Defense is very focused on the vascular strangulation, the chokehold. He likes to call it a rear naked chokehold. The rear vascular restraint hold is one potential mechanism that Dr. Burr said. But she also said that it could be just fingers to the carotids, right? From the front or the back. And if you're putting your thumbs from the front in a person's carotid and hooking your fingers behind the ears, that could cause bruising. And if you're going from the back and putting your fingers into the carotids and putting your thumb behind the ears, that could also cause bruising. And then she testified also, if you're in a rear vascular restraint chokehold, the arm and the pressure to the ears could cause the bruising and abrasion. So there's multiple potential mechanisms. We don't know. We weren't there. Marcy can't tell us. But any one of those would fit the vascular restraint or the vascular strangulation. So then we need to define what strangulation is. Okay, we're starting to lose paper here. Basically just means compressing a person's neck and obstructing their blood flow or ability to breathe. So either it's an anterior compression where you're compressing their breathing, their trachea, or it's a lateral compression where you're compressing the carotids and the jugular. This cuts off your air, this cuts off your blood flow. Both effectuate death. This actually effectuates death a little bit faster and causes unconsciousness much faster. And then there is a special allegation. So if you were to convict either on count 1, the murder in the first degree, or the lesser included of the murder in the second degree, or count 2, the felony murder in the second degree, then you go to the special verdict. And the special verdict is just whether or not they're intimate partners. And so you may have wondered why we were asking, were they legally married? Do they have biological children? Things like that. This is why. Jury instruction 21. Intimate partner means a spouse or persons who have a child in common. So Marcy and Kevin were legally married. They had children in common. They were technically intimate partners for purposes of the law. In this case, her body tells us what happened. The affair tells us why. And the timeline tells us how. And when you put it all together, there really is only one conclusion that fits with every piece of the evidence, which is Marcy was killed by a vascular strangulation at the hands of the only person that was there, which is her husband. The law requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt, not proof beyond all doubt. The standard has been met in this particular case, and I'm going to have one more opportunity to speak with you because it is my burden, but I thank you for your attention during closing arguments and during this trial.
Okay, so that's opening statements. Let me get closing statements. Good grief. I'm talking about some doggone opening statements. So that's the closing statements for the prosecution team. Let me get the defense prosecution team up. I know that y'all are saying that, I see some people are saying that this is going to be a tough case for the prosecution team for the jury to decide. I think so. Depending on how you look at it, like them doggone kids. Remember we had that Emmy that got up on the stand that said some other stuff. I'm like, oh man, I don't know what to do. And y'all know me, I'm all for the defense until I'm not for the defense. And I don't know what. I don't know where to be at with this guy here. I just really don't. I don't know. And I can't believe, it's hard for me to believe that the kids, like he even got the kids on this notion, on this board. God, I don't know if it's hard for me to believe or I just don't want to believe it. Is that fair? Like, I don't know if I want to believe that the kids had something to do with it or that the kids are okay. I'm always pro-defense until I'm not pro-defense. I just want the state to prove it, and for the right person to be, if you are guilty of something, I want you to go to jail. I want you to do, serve your crime, your time. But if you're not guilty, I definitely don't want not guilty people to be behind bars. So, just to get somebody. Some people are just like, okay, get them by any means necessary. Get somebody, anybody. We don't care who it is. We just need somebody. And no, I'm not probably that person. I'm more of a person. You may have the right person. Good. And I want you to prove it. Let me update our banner and then we'll get started with the, I think he gave them like 45 minutes each, just so y'all aware. And I am currently trying to see if they are in, did they start any type of deliberations on Friday? I don't think they did. I think they holding off until Tuesday. I only say that because I think that this testimony, the defense put on their case like in all of one day. I think that, everybody that the defense called, they did it all in that same day, and then they kind of like went to the prosecution's, closing arguments or something like that. Or maybe they just did his testimony and went into closing arguments. But let's see what the defense gonna say. Oh, look, we're not doing Latasha Daniels right now. Wrong one. Okay, here we go. Okay, Leah, thank you so much for coming over here. And you be careful out there shoveling, boo. You be out there making snow angels. Oh, I remember those. That used to give me a little workout being out there getting that snow. Like I used to be excited to be out there sweat. It's a good sweat. It's a good calorie burn. That's what I can tell you. Yeah, Delaney. I don't know if he really I don't know if he used the kids or the kids are so brainwashed. I don't know, because the daughter, when she got up on the stand, it was like she looked at what the prosecution team was accusing her dad of, and she got up on the stand just to rebut all of that information. It's clear that they definitely have a relationship with his fiance, who was the mistress at the time, Cynthia, and the dad and the mom, well, Kevin, who is the defendant, and Cynthia and his son Ted, they all stay in the same house now. So I just find it hard. I can't believe that the kids would go through this. I mean, like, it was so messed up, Delaney. It just, I don't want to be no spoiler, but guys, it's about maybe a little bit over 8 hours. I'm trying to see it. Maybe I'll put a poll out there. I'll put a poll and y'all can tell me if y'all want me to just premiere it. But it's a little bit over 8 hours of testimony of all the testimony that they provided in this trial. So I don't really want to spoil it for anybody that hasn't seen it. But I mean, even the son, man, like creepy, like the things that, but different families do different things. So I don't know the who, what, when, where, and why. But I just feel kind of sad that when we talk about kids that got to choose between parents and yeah. I don't know. I don't know, Barb. Ain't no telling. Yeah, so I'll put a poll in there. Y'all let me know if y'all want me to premiere it. If y'all want me to premiere it, I'll premiere it so we can all watch it together and chat together. The 8 hours worth of testimony. You think it's about 8 hours worth of testimony? If not, then I'll just upload it to the page and everybody can go watch it at their own leisure. No emotion. Neither one of them. Couldn't believe it. Okay, let's see what we got for these closings from the defense.
Kevin did not kill Marcy. They did not prove that. They loved each other. It was not a perfect marriage. They'd been together for about 22 years as a married couple, good times, bad times. But it was, in fact, a failing marriage. Along the way, they managed to put their own interests aside so that they could raise these two wonderful kids that we saw, Megan and Ted. They were a great team, and Kevin speaks highly of his wife. I won't go through all the details because you've heard them all just recently, but I'm going to kind of jump to this part. In 2017, they buy the new house. And you've heard that with the house comes this bed set with a nightstand. You're probably really sick and tired of hearing about nightstands. But you know why this is important? Because it doesn't mean anything. They have made the nightstand the centerpiece of their case. This is the bed set that came with the house in 2017. They paid about $800, I guess, for the entire lot. This piece went here, it was always there. Here's why it doesn't matter. Because even if in fact it wasn't there that night, Kevin was used to it being there. You know how it is when you walk into a room at night and you've been in that room a million times, you know how to walk around your bed. You know how to avoid the next thing. You know how to avoid everything and find everything, even in the pitch black, because you've been there a million times. You have that muscle memory. It doesn't matter. And it's pitch black in that room. But at the same time, Kevin says it was there. And who else says it was there? Eric Miller said it was there. He didn't remember telling me that. So we can question his memory a little bit. But when I interviewed him, he said he saw the nightstand. Who else saw the nightstand? That was Silva. Mr. Silva came in. He said he saw it. He'd never even been in the house before. So was the nightstand there? Yes. Does it really matter? No. He said he cleared the nightstand, and for some reason the detective said, well, no, I saw the nightstand. It had things on top of it, so it wasn't clear. The nightstand was there. It doesn't matter. It's a red herring. They raised their kids and they arranged their lives so that they wouldn't have to have daycare. This is true cooperation of parents. They had their ups and downs. Kevin wasn't happy with the physical side of the relationship. He was very happy with her as a mother of his kids, loved that part. It was great for his kids, and he wanted what was best for his kids more than anything, more than for himself. So he stayed with her for the kids. He spared them from their arguments. He didn't tell them about the affair. He wasn't completely honest when it came to the affair. He hid it from his wife and his kids, but he told everybody else. Kevin is a very open person. Too open. He tells everybody that he has financial insecurity. He tells everybody he's not happy with his marriage because she spends too much money, she's not working enough, and she's not intimate with me enough. Tells everybody that stuff. He tells people he's having an affair. These are the same people that he called to his house that night when he needed help for his wife. He told, and this is important, the state keeps saying, without any basis at all, his story kept changing. He got interviewed 3 times, his story kept changing, and even here it kept changing. It didn't change. You have all 3 interviews. If you have the patience and the time, this is an important thing, listen to all 3 of those interviews if you have the time for that. The story is the same every single time. I got Chinese food, I went home, and we watched movies, we were intimate. He doesn't say that part every time, but he's never asked. And at some point, Marcy went to bed. She came down for ibuprofen. She went back upstairs. She threw up. I went to help her. She went to bed. I went back downstairs. It's the same story every single time. And he's not planning for this. This is not a plan. The first one is when his wife died unexpectedly, and he's being approached by a detective first thing in the morning within an hour and a half of her death. He tells the story. And then he doesn't know an investigation is going on. And on the 23rd, this is just about 2 weeks later, detectives show up unannounced. He invites them in, talks to them for a long time, and tells the same story every single time. He mentions the garbage bag on the floor. Okay. That never came up for the detective because that would have verified the story. He told them about it at that time. They could have gone back and checked the Washington Police Department pictures because the investigator who went out there took that photo that has the pants and the garbage bag on the floor. That was left there before everybody came in because once Marcy was pronounced deceased, everybody went downstairs and Officer Southern cordoned off the area of the garden and let everybody back in. There was no way for him to plan and make up all this stuff. And with regard to finances, sure, wish they had saved more money. But were they having financial difficulty? No. They made pretty good money, and in all this 2 years, all the investigation they've done, all the records that they've recovered, the financial records that they recovered, you know how many deaths they found in default? 0.
Objection, facts known as evidence.
There was no evidence.
Sorry, I overruled the objection, remind you that the argument is just that, it's not evidence. If you hear a statement that's not supported by the evidence, disregard it. If you hear a statement and it is supported by the evidence, give it such weight as you think.
There's not a single shred of evidence in this case that they had a loan in default anywhere, ever. Marcy tragically passed away. Marcy had underlying health conditions. We will never know all of her underlying health conditions because she never saw the doctor. She complained of having chronic headaches. She had headaches nearly daily, every other day. Carried a Costco-sized bottle of ibuprofen with her all the time for headaches. That's not normal. Who has headaches every single day and doesn't go to the doctor about it? Who has chest pain starting just a few months before this matter happens? Who has chest pains periodically and doesn't go see the doctor? She never has medical care. There's not a single record of her ever having one single physical or annual checkup with the doctor. Nothing. All she has is urgent care. That's it. The one thing that she did have was the LifeScape. And why did she have that? She had that because Kevin wanted her to have it. It was a benefit they had available for her. He scheduled it a year in advance so that she would at least have this check. And she went there and said there was really nothing wrong. But what did it reveal? She had fatty liver disease. She had high cholesterol. She had PVCs, which may or may not be a big problem in combination with other things. She also had a resting heart rate of 95. And back in the medical records that Dr. Stankus looked at, her resting heart rate was 100 at some of those visits. That's a high resting heart rate. And it means, according to Dr. Stankus, that her heart was not operating efficiently. When we have these kind of underlying conditions, it could lead to trouble. That's why we see the doctor, because we could run into a problem like Marcy did. The story he told over and over and over again to you is the same story about getting Chinese food, coming back, watching movies. Every single time it's the same. Now, the phone records that the state brings up, this a challenge. Look through the records. Here's what you'll find. You'll find that there's activity on both phones, kind of off and on throughout the day. People live with their phones. I don't care where they go. They sit around at home, they got their phone. They go to dinner, a lot of people keep them on the dinner table. Some people do it in the car. It's with us constantly. We do everything on these phones. So it's not surprising there's activity. But if you look at these phone records, if you look at them side by side, you got steps data for Marcy and for Kevin in there. And understand this, it's not the person, it's the phone. Kevin went to bed about 11 o'clock or so. Marcy is still surfing and she's looking at Mother of the Bride dresses between 12 and 1 o'clock in the morning. Kevin is asleep. Yes, he told the police they were both asleep because that's what he thought. He believed they were both asleep. If you look at the records and compare them side by side and you can make head or tail of them, you will see that the two phones traveled together 4 times in the evening. The phones are traveling at the same time. Marcy knows his passcode. Marcy's following up on his web searches. There's one point where Marcy is checking, and you saw it on the display that State just had up. She's looking at Hotel Ledger. She's suspicious. She's checking up on her husband. She's suspicious, and for good reason. On January 8th, Kevin wakes up to the dog whip. Now, this is where the exhibits that we have in are kind of important. The leggings that were brought in, they're in one of the exhibits that you have in the back there. If you do want to take them out, make sure you wear gloves, handle them carefully. They're important for a couple of reasons. One is they have pet hair all over. This would corroborate the fact that she was in bed when whatever happened. That's part of it. There's also a picture in one of these where she has a big burn stain on it. And I'm going to explain why that's really important in just a minute here. Kevin wakes up and he finds, she sees something's not right. There's kind of a shaking. He's having a hard time describing. And she realizes she's completely stiff. He's seen this before because he is a paramedic. He knows what a seizure looks like. It doesn't mean you have to diagnose the problem. You just have to recognize the seizure. It is a symptom, something that happens. He runs around the bed, checks on her after trying to quiet the dog down. He checks on her, and he can't wake her up. He's shouting at her. He can't wake her up, and so he lifts her on the floor. You know, this is the part where Kevin has had 2 years to come up with another reason why she died. He explained to you that he lowered her as carefully as he could, clearing the table onto the floor. Didn't touch her neck. He could have said, oh yeah, I was really in a hurry, I touched her neck. He didn't say that. He could have. He gently put her on the floor, he got her on the other side, and he rolled her up on her side. This is the part where his hand gets under her neck and comes around toward the front. This is the only time. He does not believe that he hurt her. Did he? Remember, this is 181 pounds of a stiff body, a person who's not cooperating, not helping, and this is Mr. West doing this all by himself from a dead sleep in the middle of the night in the dark. And he is trying to roll her gently on her side, which he did. He realizes that he can't help. He's a paramedic, and he's calling for help when he's the one who's supposed to be the help. That takes a swallowing of pride, a person who thinks about somebody more than himself. So he calls 911. You will have the 911 call with you. And I encourage you to listen to it again. I know you've heard it twice, but I strongly encourage you, because when you listen to that, you can hear what's happening. It starts out as a seizure. He's alarmed, but he's not panicking. He's trying to do all the right things. When you listen to this, ask yourself, does this sound like a man who just choked out his wife? No, it doesn't. This sounds like a man who's trying to help his wife, a man who's worried about his wife. It progresses. It goes from a seizure. She stops seizing, and then she's not breathing. Now, look at the timestamp on this, because it is not until 3 minutes into the phone call that she stops breathing and the seizure stops. This is one of those long duration seizures that Dr. Snake has talked about, the ones that she has been caring for. She's been watching people, monitoring their glucose levels. This is what we found out. You need one of these long sustained seizures. That's at least 3 minutes, plus maybe the minute before that it took Kevin to call the police, plus whatever was happening with her before he woke up. Sometimes they don't wake up when the dog whimpers, right? Sometimes Sadie can be whimpering and they don't get up, and Sadie goes down the hallway to find Megan. Maybe Sadie did, couldn't find Megan and came back. So we have minimum 4 to 5 minutes of an arch position, full body seizure. And now the reason that's important is because they brought the blood glucose level. Dr. Burt never considered it. She didn't check it. She was asked about it later. It's in the report, but she never saw it. It wasn't part of her analysis at all, because she wasn't looking for something that could truly explain it other than what was being proposed by the state. So a 300 glucose level is a very high level. It is not something that you would ordinarily expect from a strangulation, from a fight or flight situation. That's what Dr. Snake said. She treats these people all the time. People have come in from a terrible fight, and she checks their glucose level right away. It's never like that. It never spikes 300. She said it's most consistent with a heart attack and a seizure combination. Remember the doctor, Dr. Stankus, all the doctors you saw, and you saw them, she's the only one who's seen a live patient in the last 20 to 25 years. She sees them all the time. He goes to unlock the door at 7:23, minute 7:23 in the recording. He's gone for a total of 20 seconds open. The reason he does that, and the state brought this up, that the Halligan tool to demonstrate that somehow that he was causing delays because he didn't care or something like that. He professionally should know not to go down there and stop doing compressions. But he was gone 20 seconds. This is a man who knows that if he didn't, that the Halligan device is going to be on the engine, which might be 1, 2, 3 minutes later in the ambulance, which was not Halligan. So he's gone 20 seconds. It was a good judgment call that he made. He was doing his very best to make her chances of survival the best, to make the chances of her dying minimize. That is what he did. In the call, you'll also hear him say something like, I should have known. I should have known. He's talking about when she threw up and he was caring for her. I should have known. I should have done something. He should have helped. This is not a man who has just killed his wife. It makes no sense. The 911 call speaks volumes. So he calls 911, and what does he know? What is the one thing he knows? He's got a lot of choices here. Okay, if the state said he killed her at around 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning, what would you have when the medics arrived? You'd have rigor mortis. You'd have lividity. And what did we hear from the witness? We don't try to resuscitate people with rigor mortis, lividity. We don't. They don't even touch that. So we know that this is a person who's just recently gone into cardiac arrest. We know that. So what does he know when he makes that call? He knows that he's going to get anywhere between 4 and 9 paramedics and professionals who know what they're doing, who can assess the situation, who can scrutinize things. He knows he's going to get law enforcement. He knows that, and he knows there's going to be an autopsy if there's a death. He knows that. He's been doing this for a long time. They leave the eye gel in for the medical examiner because that's a request. So they know that. These paramedics understand that whole process. He knows who's coming, and the people who are coming who are paramedics, what do they know? They know that he's told them he's not happy in his marriage. He's thinking about leaving her. He's thinking about leaving her soon. He's worried about finances. He's worried about his pension. He's calling all these people over to this situation when he just killed her. He had a lot of choices. He didn't have to call them. He could have left her and gone somewhere else. If he was really that diabolical, he could have tumbled her down the stairs. He could have done a whole lot of things. He could have gone to sleep in another room. He could have done all those things. And he was honest with you. He didn't sleep with her. Off and on he did. But he had all those choices, and the one thing he chose was to call the paramedics, which put him under scrutiny. It increased her chance of survival. If a person had just killed their wife or their spouse just now, and they successfully revive that person, what a nightmare that would be. Guess who's going to point the finger and say, you just choked me out? He called and did his best to try to save her. His mind was clear and his judgment was good. When the medics come in, they're working in the dark. It's not the pitch black that Kevin was working in, but they're working in the dark because they have just the lighting from the bathroom, from the hallway, and the closet. That's about it. So they're kind of working in the dark, but they're doing their very best. And this is what Eric Miller said. He said, we bring order to chaos. Remember that? Even a paramedic can recognize that this is not a calm situation. They're not being They're not being gentle. They're not treating them gingerly. This is a last ditch effort, one of them said, because this is the only chance they have to save their life, and every second counts. They're doing everything they can as fast as they can in a way that doesn't kill the person, but they want to save that person. They're moving their hands quickly. They're handling that person not that gently. They're in there shouting orders, and you heard someone in there yell, "I jelly." So these guys are going really fast. They're doing their best. They're very well trained professionals. But they're having what Dr. Stink has called aggressive contact with that person. They're working on getting the mask on. They have to get that on there tight so it gets the seal. If you're working with one hand, then you've got to have a much tighter grip to get that whole thing down. And if you're switching hands, you're doing it on both sides. This kind of stuff can happen any single time. Every time this could happen. The EC grip they talked about had one finger up here, the other one's trailing below the chin line, and then they reach up on the mask and squeeze like that. The other one, and you saw Mark Woodland demonstrate this. Did you see the grip he put on that face when he was putting the tongue around and putting that up? He was grabbing very aggressive. They're not being gentle, and they have to pull that head back and up and tilt it back so that they get an open airway. And that can be a little more difficult with people who have a lot of extra tissue because it can have a tendency to kind of collapse on itself. So the opportunity for injury, for bruising, is significant in a case like this, even with professionals who are well trained and doing their very, very best. For them, Marcy's appearance was the last thing on their mind. It was a consideration, but they wanted to save her. They weren't that worried about what her face was going to look like later. Now, the state has two theories they've boiled down to. One is that he did I have a hard time saying it, it's a naked rear arm chokehold. Okay. All right. What's the problem with that? Well, here's the problem. So if you're doing it from behind, and it's in bed, and Marcy is having a seizure, a full body seizure, and this is the kind where they urinate. Remember Mark Woodland said the vast majority of people having seizures urinate, and she did. She urinated a lot. She urinated all over the bed. That's what Mark Woodland said. He said there's a big bunch of urine on top. There's no urine on the bottom. That means it happened on the bed. If Kevin is behind her doing this, why wouldn't he have urine on? Doesn't fit. But if you're following the program, if it doesn't fit, force it. The state will have another chance to talk to you. So they're going to figure out a way to force that. Ask them to force that fact. Why is there no urine on Kevin at all? And the idea that now, okay, well, if not that, we're not really sure, but we want you to be sure, okay? Not us, you. Now it's pressing the thumbs on there. If you're going to press on the thumbs, use your common sense. Yeah, we had doctors here for 3 days. If you press hard enough on someone to choke them out, you're going to get some fight back, number one, and you're going to get some deep, deep bruising. That's just common sense. After Marcy passed away, you heard the testimony. He was going from hysterical to nothing, so just fine. Hysterical, nothing, just fine. How is a person supposed to behave? Everybody processes grief in their own way. Everybody's different. And none of us know until we get there, and hopefully we don't. None of us know how it's going to be, how we're going to get. Kevin Belines, who used to be a good friend of his, came down in the morning. And at that time, he said Kevin just had no emotion. And he said something like, I feel bad for not feeling bad. It was at a moment where he was feeling nothing, and he shared that with his good friend. He didn't say, well, I'm sure that happened. He didn't say, hey, buddy, I can tell you this is not the worst thing that ever happened. It was nothing like that. He just, with nothing going on his head, just said, I just feel bad for not feeling bad. Or I feel bad for not feeling worse, something like that. But he was having a candid moment and these numb, blank feelings of confusion, and that's what he said to his friend. Scott Slocum says that he said, I feel relief, I feel a burden's been lifted. That was not a conversation that happened that day. That was something that happened later. And it wasn't, the context is so out of context that all, there's no context given as to what they were talking about. It has something to do with people providing food for the family, and they had this food train that the union put on, and they had this train of food coming every night, and it was such a relief. It lifted such a burden because they had family around, and it gave them food to eat so they didn't have to worry about that. To take that out of context is ridiculous. Casey Jones comes over the first night. She's the gossip. She's a friend of Katie Lindstrom. Well, Katie kind of distances herself from Casey and said, well, we work together. But they all shared that PC statement. Remember that? She shared the probable cause statement. That's the thing that has all bad stuff. Everything the state is trying to say is contained in that. And it's not necessarily available at that time, but Casey got a hold of it. She works for the fire department. She knows people. She got a hold of it. She emailed it to at least 5 people, she said. She said she got it from somebody else. So this thing is going around the fire department like wildfire, and it's just getting everybody thinking and talking. And so now suddenly, everything you do is suspicious. Every time you say you clear a table, you're clearing things off of it instead of getting something over it. Everything's being misinterpreted. You're being viewed in the most dim light possible. Casey says, well, he seemed happier than I've ever seen. He was happy, he was smiling, he was fake crying. Reminds me of that book, The Stranger by Dumas, where the guy's convicted because somebody said he didn't cry at his own mother's funeral. It has nothing to do with this. That's just gossip. They're making a big deal out of the fact that Kevin deleted messages from his phone. You saw the messages. You had them read to you. They're terrible. It's a fight between the parents. They're kind of going back and forth and accusing each other of stuff. Megan wanted the phone. Kevin wanted to give it to her. He didn't want her to have the last memory of her mother being this terrible fight that she had. It wasn't even that bad, actually. This kind of mean words going back and forth between her mother and her father. He got rid of those messages. And if you look at the dates he got rid of them, it was substantially after she passed away, and it was just before he gave the phone to Megan. The picture, as you come in the front door, there's a living room to the left, there's a picture up on the wall, and you had to look at it every single time you went in. You love this one. But it's a painful memory. So he took it down, took it upstairs, he placed it against the wall so they wouldn't see it all the time, just to give themselves time to heal. Because she didn't just pass away, she died tragically and dramatically and unexpectedly. This is painful. The furniture, you heard a lot about the furniture. Didn't want to sleep in that furniture anymore. They never wanted it in the first place. And in some ways, it's kind of an honor to Marcy that he wanted to finally get rid of it because they never really wanted this stuff. It was just convenient and it was economically good to keep it when they first bought the house. So he doesn't get rid of it right away. This is not a guy who killed his wife. This is a guy who right after the storm, maybe around the 22nd, 21st, 20th, something like that, his friends helped him get rid of that stuff. His mother washed the sheets, his sister threw away Marcy's pillow, and his dad threw away the comforter. Kevin didn't do this stuff. And then they're talking about him vacuuming his room. Well, his friend did that. You heard Wade talk about that. He said he's the one who did it because he helped with the bed. It was messy underneath. There's a lot of stuff under there, so he helped clean that up. But if you hear these things, if you want to make Kevin look bad, blame him for it. The police show up unannounced on the 23rd. When he hears them there, he invites them in, holds the dog back. You see the dog in the video? Dog is very protective. Dog barks. Dog that's very protective and barking, do you think a dog is going to sit by while somebody is strangling out one of their owners? These are the things, we can't put the dog on the stand, but the dog can testify. The dog didn't say anything. In fact, in the videos, the dog was standing all over Kevin. If you look at the searches, they talked about, we had a detective, Ellison be testifying, they had thousands and thousands and thousands of text messages and Google searches and whatnot. Kevin is about the most text-happy person you could know. He texts everybody prolifically. And all those thousands of messages and emails and searches, not once is there anything suspicious like how to kill your wife and get away with it, what to do with this, how to do that. There's nothing even related to her death as far as how to hide something, how to cover up something. When this happens, how does that happen? What can an autopsy reveal? Will a strangulation show up in an autopsy? Nothing like that. And they took his phones without notice. And all they can do is make a big deal out of the fact that he got rid of a bunch of nasty messages between him and his wife before he gave his daughter the phone. It is true that Kevin had an affair. It is. It's true that he was in love with this other woman. It's true he had plans with her. He didn't tell the detectives everything about it because they didn't ask him about it. He didn't. He was just kind of talking about, was he downplaying a little bit with them? Probably. But at the time, he didn't know he was under investigation for the murder of his wife who passed away tragically by his side. He didn't know that. The thing about the dog is a little thing that I refer to as body language. There's certain things that are unspoken in a trial testimony we can't take, but we look at body language. Matters like this, people kind of scatter from one side to the other. We did it, we didn't do it, or I don't know, something like that. And you can see the people who read the PC statement around the firehouse, how they're kind of reticent to endorse him, except for one of the witnesses. But Kevin's kids, Megan and Ted, both still love him. They're both very close to their mother. They're both very close to their father. And Ted said, I was close to both, but I was close to my mother. They're right by his side. They're standing with him. They love him, but they're being honest with you. But their body language tells you that they're still supporting him. The autopsy in this case, and there's two. There's two autopsies. There's the first one that doesn't reach any conclusion. The body's sent away to the funeral home. And here comes this part that they're trying to make it sound like it's routine. This is unheard of. You ever heard of this? We're done with the autopsy. We put the organs back in. We sew it up. We put it in the bag. We here, give it to the driver, and say, "Go on, you got it." And then somebody comes in and says, "Well, hey, they have an affair."
Objection, facts not in evidence.
I'll overrule the objection.
And then call up, "Hey, have that driver turn around, bring the body back," and then a day later they start again. And Dr. Burt said on the stand, when she's talking about the injury, she goes, "It didn't look that bad to me the first time. It didn't look like that much. It looked worse the second time," after she had this new information. Where's the objectivity? This doctor's being swayed by a rumor. And the state's absolutely right. We don't have a real good explanation for the bump on the back of the head. We don't have a good explanation for the swelling around the esophagus. We don't. Kevin didn't cause it. Doesn't know how it got there. He's had a lot of time to think about it. Boy, if he had planned this and knew it was coming, he could have said, I heard her fall. He could have said she fell. He could have said so many things. He could have said I bumped her head on the nightstand when I was laying to the floor because I was in a hurry and she was heavy. He didn't say any of that. He's had all this time to say that, and he never did. And the state keeps saying, well, you keep changing your story, but they haven't said how. Could it have been Ted's massage? Nobody knows. Dr. Burt said that it could be caused by a long, sustained pressure. Could cause that kind of bruising. And the reason we know that it's just a bruise, a contusion, and not a hematoma is because she didn't write it in the report. Remember what Dr. Nara said? I asked her, if there's a hematoma, would you put that in your report? Would you put the word in there specifically? Did you see the word hematoma in Dr. Burt's report? No, I didn't. Here's the other side of that. The hematoma is the bump part. The bruise is the color. The hematoma is the bump part. And when the investigator, Christine Holroyd, went out there, what did she do? She said she palpated the skull. She's trained in this. They palpated, they touched the skull, felt it all over, looking for bumps. Did she find any bumps? No. She was there within 2 hours of Marcy's passing, didn't feel any bumps, and it doesn't show up in the doctor's report. The bruising around the jawline, that's just EMS efforts. Do we know that for a fact? No. But it makes sense because you don't have to force the facts to make that fit. If you want to believe the state and go with their story, you got to force it. You got to force it. Now the bruising on the carotid sheath, this is quite telling. This is where the state doesn't even get close to beyond the regional doubt. Right here is that Dr. Burt said, well, we don't cut into the carotid sheath. That would be the only way to really verify that it had been impacted. We don't do that. Why? Just because they might want to do a showing. When EMS did their work, the last thing on their mind was the appearance of her face. When Dr. Burt did it, the first thing on her mind was the appearance of her face. She didn't have to be sure. They want you to be sure, but Dr. Burt didn't think it was necessary. I don't need to be sure. I can just go ahead and jump to that conclusion. I don't have enough information because I didn't look, but I can jump to that conclusion. Now, you will have those leggings in evidence, and I encourage you to take a look at it. It just kind of corroborates the hair and so forth. In the picture that I just showed you, that shows the large urine stain around here. The one that's just on top, but that doesn't reflect the large one that was on the bed. So that's something you can consider. This is the phone on the bed. This is the phone picture that Detective Lopez took that shows you where the phone was. This is corroborative of the idea that somebody early on took the nightstand, yep, I said it again, took the nightstand, moved it away, and took the phone off and threw it on the bed. Or maybe Marcy had the phone in her hands. Who knows? It doesn't matter. We talked about the closet. The detective made a big deal out of the fact that there was largely men's clothing in the closet, meaning that, and things were not real tidy, meaning that only a man could live there. But remember, this is all women's clothing over here. This is Kevin's work stuff, and those are a few of his shirts right there. And Marcy's got a big pile of clothes down below in drawers or something like that. There's another good of the same, and you'll have these in evidence. You can look at these and ponder these all your life. This is Marcy's complexion. And the doctor said she could see petechiae on there. Dr. Mara said, yeah, it could be. Dr. Senka said, mostly not, maybe a couple, but there's a lot of opportunity for petechiae. It could be the throwing up, it could be the Lucas device, it could be the compressions, it could be a whole lot of things. But this is not what you get. These are not petechiae, these are blemishes here. This is not what you get when somebody is choked out and killed. Because Dr. Stanka says she's seen people who come in from training at the military base and they practice this chokehold. In 20 seconds where somebody is just passed out, they have a sharp demarcation between no petechiae and lots of petechiae. And that's because she explained about the compression of the jugular and the carotid and the vertebral artery still supplying the brain. You remember that, I won't say it again. But there would have been significant petechiae, and there's just not. But rather than be sure, why don't we just take a leap and just assume it is? And that's what we did here. Why? Because she didn't take the 5 minutes it would take to cut out that little spot, send it to the lab, and see if it's petechiae. It wasn't worth her time. Why bother? Why be that sure when I can assume it and I don't have to do the extra work? Dr. Garrett doesn't take that long. When I asked Dr. Burt, remember this? She would not tell me how long it takes. I don't know. I can't answer the question. She would not tell me anything. She wouldn't agree with me on anything. I asked her if it was better to do an autopsy quickly. She'd go, could you define it quickly? So she did not want to cooperate with me on anything. This bruising, this is again, this is blemishes, maybe a little bit of CPR, injury, if you want to call it that. And injury is kind of a strong word. A little bruise is not an injury. Maybe in medical terms it is, but not in regular people speak. These are just blemishes on her face. It's just her complexion. I'm sorry to show you this again, but the doctor is looking at spots and saying, I don't know what to make of that. The little red dot there. She's just looking at photos. These are not photos she's been looking at recently. These are not photos she looked at the time. She didn't take them. She didn't review them. She didn't finish the autopsy till 2 days later. So she doesn't know what these are. She's just assuming. And this is a normal picture. You can use your common sense. You know, you can give great weight to what experts say. You don't have to. You can use your common sense. The jury instruction says that. Because if you look at this, these shadows up here, she says are injuries. They're shadows. They're just shadows. This has been cut away. This part down here looks more like an injury when you look at it, but that's up to you to decide. But those are what she calls artifacts. That should mean in other words, she says, we probably did that when we were cutting in there. So take a good close look at these and judge for yourself. Those are not injuries. And if those are artifacts, why aren't these artifacts? She doesn't know. And sometimes a bruise is just a bruise. People get bruises all the time. Anybody who works in a shop gets bruises all the time. Anybody who works in the yard gets bruises all the time. Do some gardening, you get bruises. We all get them. Sometimes they'll have a bruise, you don't know where it came from. This is the part where the contusion is back here. This is where Ted said he was giving his deep massage. Again, do we know if that caused it? We have no idea. But she liked it hard, she liked it firm, she didn't complain, she wanted more and more and more. This is the picture, the wedding picture that Kevin took down and put upstairs. And the bottom line is, level of certainty you have to have is beyond a reasonable doubt. Not beyond all doubt, but beyond all reasonable doubt. What kind of certainty do we have here? What did Dr. Burt say? Every question was answered with could be, potentially. She must have said that 50 times. Could be, potentially, could be, potentially. That is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It is a guess. When you don't bother to verify petechia, you don't bother to cut into the carotid sheath because you want to save someone's face for a viewing, you're missing information. You're making a decision based upon insufficient information. That is what we call a guess. It is not proof beyond reasonable doubt. There is nothing in the jury instructions that says, well, you can take a guess. It doesn't say that. In fact, what the jury instructions say is completely different. It does not say you don't have to be that sure. It says that if from such consideration, this is in your jury instruction, you're going to get this to go back with you. If from such consideration, after having looked at all the evidence, you have an abiding belief in the truth of the charge, then you are satisfied beyond reasonable doubt. Abiding truth. You have to have an abiding belief. That is a belief that we save for our faith, for the love of our children. That's what an abiding belief is. It's a strongly held fundamental belief that doesn't change in 5 minutes or 5 days or 5 weeks. It doesn't change when you walk out the door. It is a decision you make based upon an abiding belief that lasts forever. They did not do that in this case. And there's another instruction that says that the fact that punishment may follow is not to be considered by you, insofar as it shall tend to make you careful. That's not in there by accident. That is intentional. That is to let you know how important this is. That is why we've been here for 2 full weeks. Thank you very much for staying with us. We've been here for 2 weeks. We've occupied all your time. We started with about 90 people. We've got down to you people. Because this is important. And these words, these jury instructions are age old. There's no mistake. You have to be extremely careful. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening. I'm not falling asleep during my monologue here. And I ask that you find Kevin not guilty of murder in first degree, not guilty of murder in second degree. Thank you.
Because the state has the burden of proof, they also have the last opportunity to address you in rebuttal argument if they wish. Did you wish to make rebuttal argument?
Yes. That was a lot. There was a lot in there that was not in evidence, that was not testified to by any person. And I think it's an important reminder that what I say and what defense counsel says is not evidence. The evidence is the testimony that you heard and the exhibits that you'll have with you. I'm not going to go through everything he talked about, but there are a few things that I'd like to touch on. One is he said Kevin's had 2 years to come up with a way that she was injured, but he hasn't, except he has. Remember, he paraded in his son, who had given a demonstration of a massage that he had given his mother, right, where he only touched these parts. In fact, he was very careful to say, sometimes I lift up on the jaw, but I didn't on this occasion. That It's that video where Mr. Walker interjects and says, but that's not how you do, you just don't really remember. You could watch the video, it's in evidence. And then he comes in here, and now all of a sudden he's taking his elbow to the back of his mother's head, which is completely different than what he did in the video. And he's massaging his mother's carotids. It's not reasonable. It's true that his kids love him. There's no doubt. And there's no doubt that they love their mother. And they probably can't imagine a scenario where their father would hurt their mother. So they're willing to do whatever it takes. Even for being convicted. It's understandable. But it's not reasonable. They're saying it's not reasonable. They've been manipulated. As far as the phone deletion that he was talking about, he's saying that, yes, of course, he deleted the fight because he was going to give Marcy's phone to his daughter, Megan. Except the information that was deleted was on Kevin's phone, not on Marcy's phone. That was not the phone that was being given to Megan. In any event, Marcy's phone was still in the house. Megan was back at UW. Megan hadn't taken the phone. Now, there's a lot of talk about what's going on in the room, right? We're talking a lot about the side table, this nightstand. Why is it important? Well, it's not the smoking gun. It's something that comes up in one of his interviews. It's a little weird, where he says that he had to clear the nightstand to get her off the bed. And when they look at the body cam, there's no nightstand there. A little strange. It wouldn't be a big deal if he took the stand and said, I thought there was a nightstand, maybe there wasn't. He's doubling down. He just keeps saying there was a nightstand, there was a nightstand. There's no nightstand. Why is he lying about it? The table was not there by Marcy's side, probably because they weren't really sleeping in the same room together at that stage. Remember, Chris Castle said that the defendant had made a comment that this was the first time they'd slept together in a while. And that makes sense when you look at their texts. They're continuing to make it an issue. They're bringing in additional exhibits of the bed and the nightstands. There's no one saying they moved it. There's no one observed moving it. The body-worn camera starts shortly after the paramedics arrive. The first person in is Rick Burnham. He says there's no nightstand. Didn't see it, didn't move it. Take it for what it's worth. As far as the bed and the urine are concerned, we can't say definitively that there was urine in the bed, but Mark Woodland testified that there was a substance on the bed that was consistent with urine. Unfortunately, by the time law enforcement executes the search warrant, the bed is gone, the mattress is gone, the bedding is gone or washed. So it's hard to confirm, but her pants do have what appears to be urine on them. So it makes sense that there could be urine in the bed. Does that tell us how she died? No. Because you'll remember Dr. Burt's testimony that even people that survive strangulations often urinate themselves. Common hallmark of a strangulation. And it's a common hallmark of dying. And it's a common hallmark of a seizure. So it doesn't really tell us how she died. It just gives us maybe a clue about where she was at some point during the struggle or the death. Now, defense counsel showed you a photograph of the bed with her phone in it, where she presumably was, and the sheets. Now, you'll notice that the sheets are also a little bit strange. Sheets are pulled away from the side of the bed, toward the center of the bed, which is a little bizarre if he's pulling her off the bed this way. Why is that? Is it a smoking gun? No, it's a little weird. Pants are inside out, her bra is fastened strangely, she's wearing an underwire bra, there was a lot of discussion about the bra. Take it for what it's worth. It's things that are just a little bizarre. Do we fully understand their significance? Probably not. But it's possible that they didn't go to bed that night. It's possible that they were having a fight. It's possible that he had told her he was going to leave. Perhaps she told him she was going to leave. We don't know. We weren't there. But it certainly wasn't a situation where both parties went to bed, slept, and he awoke to a seizure. Because we can tell from the phones that he was up. I want to talk a little bit about the experts. Defense counsel brought up Dr. Stankus, Dr. Nara, Dr. Burt. There was two others. There was two paramedics that were called as experts. There was Wade Fairclough from defense, and there was Mark Woodland from the state. They were called. So as far as Wade Fairclough was concerned, he really didn't have a whole lot to contribute. He said that he testified about the ETCO2 levels on a run sheet, but conceded that it doesn't tell you anything about when she actually died. Their levels could be consistent with somebody that died hours prior. Mark Woodland is arguably more qualified than Wade Fairclough. Mark Woodland is the EMS trainer, as you'll recall. He's the one that brought in the bag valve mask, the Lucas, things like that. He testified that Marcy's glucose level was inconsistent with someone in his training and experience who has just had a seizure, and testified again about what the ETCO2 levels showed and don't show. And he is consistent with Dr. Burt. Dr. Burt said that the glucose levels were more suggestive of a trauma, such as the strangulation, and whatever else happened, some sort of a blow. She's got some bruising on her elbows. We don't really know, but there was some sort of a struggle. And she explained to you in great detail what her findings were and why. She ultimately ruled that this case was asphyxia due to blunt neck trauma and a homicide. She did actually cut into the carotid sheaths. Defense counsel's a little bit confused. She didn't cut into the carotid artery. Carotid artery is the thing that takes the blood to the brain they use for the embalming. Doesn't really matter. She was able to fully visualize the hemorrhaging to the carotid sheath. There wasn't an injury to the carotid artery, so there was no reason to cut into it. She was able to fully visualize that. She testified as to why that would be the case. The carotid sheath is a much thinner substance. It's more vascularized. The carotid sheath, the carotid artery and the jugular vein are thicker, more hardy, harder to damage. But that the hemorrhaging to the carotid sheath was consistent with the pressure that would cause occlusion of both, so cutting off the blood flow. Dr. Burt also testified that rigor mortis and lividity would not set in a few hours, as defense counsel just told you. There was no testimony of that. Dr. Nara was a forensic pathologist that defense called, but she's also the one that peer reviewed Dr. Burt's work and agreed with Dr. Burt's work. She agreed to the cause and manner of death, blunt force trauma to the neck, asphyxia, and the manner of death being a homicide. Now, Dr. Stankus, she's not a forensic pathologist. She's not a trained death investigator. She's not a neurologist. She's not a medical leptologist or a surgeon. She's an ER physician who works in that capacity approximately half the time. She arguably has a financial motive. You'll recall she charges $500 an hour. She was not provided all of the information. She was not provided the police reports. She was not provided all of the autopsy photos. She's working with an incomplete set of data. And all she really testified to was that she would expect more petechiae in a strangulation death, and which Dr. Burt refutes, and about the blood glucose level, which is refuted by both Dr. Burt and Mark Woodland. But just as important as what Dr. Stankus does testify about is what she does not testify about. She has no explanation for Marcy's injuries. And you'll recall that she's qualified to. Defense
Objection.
counsel,
Counsel's argument, facts not in evidence. Overruled.
defense counsel asked Dr. Stankus, isn't it true that part of your job is identifying the mechanism of the injury? You recall that? And she said yes. But then they don't want to have her actually identify the mechanism of the injuries. Because she won't. She testified that she was asked to opine on the massage causing the injuries, but was not comfortable doing that. Why not? Because as Dr. Burt testified, a massage would not cause these injuries. She also had no explanation for the hemorrhage to the carotid sheath, no explanation for the hemorrhage to the esophagus, no explanation for the bilateral bruising behind the ears. No one of the first responders indicated that they ever put their fingers behind Marcy's ears. In fact, Michaela was asked that and said that she did not. She also said that she didn't use this mechanism for the head tilt. She used this. And so the bruise, that slight bruise that defense counsel just put up, that's down here, Dr. Burt testified that that's over the carotid sheath. That's over the area that the hemorrhage is. Now, defense counsel says Marcy has chronic headaches, right? And we're somehow supposed to make the leap that chronic headaches lead to death. There's no testimony about that, but for the sake of argument, let's go down that road. Connie Hahn sat next to Marcy for 20 years at work and testified that she never saw her complaining of a headache. Never saw her exhibiting signs of suffering from a headache or a migraine. You'll notice that every witness has her having significantly more headaches. Ted said 4 a year, I think. And then Megan was like every day, every other day. It was pretty frequent. And then when the defendant got up there, he said she's having them every day or every other day. The ibuprofen in her purse has gone from a travel pack to a Costco size bottle. I want to play you a clip. This is from the defendant's first interview on January 23rd. And remember defense counsel saying his story never changes?
Did she often have headaches? She didn't have migraines. She didn't have headaches.
She didn't have migraines. She didn't have headaches. That's what he said. That's what he said in the first interview with CCSO, January 23rd of 2024. That story has changed significantly. Why? Because he needs to fit the facts. He needs to come up with an excuse for how Marcy did. Defense counsel would have you believe that Marcy basically caused her own death and that she caused the affair. They want you to believe that Marcy, her sedentary lifestyle, her bad eating habits, her fondness for Diet Coke. If you hear about Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi, it's got a pretty bad rap in this case. That's what killed her. And while they're at it, they want to also blame her for his affair with Cynthia. They want you to believe that lack of sex, poor housekeeping skills, lack of cooking, in opening and again closing, they talk about how she wouldn't go to social functions. We now have a pretty good idea that that's because she wasn't invited from the testimony of Casey. They paint a picture in court that's pretty consistent with the blaming in the fight from December 13th. the text between the defendant and Marcy just weeks prior to her death, where he's blaming her, much the same way they blamed her in court. But that was not who Marcy was. Marcy was a loving mother, she was a daughter, she was a friend, and she did not deserve what happened to her. The defendant in this case is willing to pin this on everyone and anyone. The first responders caused the bruising. Ted caused the contusion, maybe the carotid hemorrhage. The cat caused him to have to empty the room. Marcy is blamed for a lot. And now, finally, she's blamed for carrying his phone around all night. According to the defense, the only person not responsible for any of this is the defendant. But there's a number of leaps that you need to take in order to buy defense's theory in this particular case. First, someone had to have caused the hemorrhage to the outside of Marcy's esophagus. It wasn't Michaela, it wasn't the eye gel. Dr. Burt told you why that doesn't make sense, it's on the outside. This is a very protected structure. It's between the trachea and the spine, the front and the back, and the carotid sheaths, the carotid, the jugular, the sides. There's also a number of muscles right here. It's deep in the neck. This is your food tube. They have no reasonable explanation for that injury. The carotid sheaths, there's hemorrhaging to both of them. They're high in her neck, just under the jaw. They're putting up a picture now and saying it's a shadow. It's not reasonable. Dr. Burt explained in great detail what those hemorrhages were. You saw them in photos. They're taking photos of photos and putting them up. You'll have the actual photos with you. There's no reasonable explanation for that injury. The Apple Health data, you'd have to believe that Marcy got up and was running all over the house with the defendant's phone, basically all night long. She has her own phone. If she's trying to go through his phone, that's not necessarily something you'd be running around the house for. Defense would have you believe that she had his phone until at least 4:21, where the phone takes 198 steps. And then she plugs it in on his side of the bed. She sneaks back to her side of the bed. She tucks herself in. She has a seizure and dies. It's not reasonable. If she was up all night going through his phone, it's reasonable to conclude that that's motive, right? He wakes up to her going through his phone, but that's not what happened here. The person walking around with the defendant's phone was the defendant, probably trying to figure out what the heck he's gonna do after he had just strangled his wife. And the answer he came up with is stage an emergency, stage a medical event, and call your buddies. And the date. You'd have to believe that it was just a coincidence. That she died from natural causes on the date that he told multiple members of Cynthia's family that he was going to leave her. Messages that he later tried to conceal by deleting them from his phone, not from the phone he gave me. The only reason he deleted them was to conceal them from law enforcement. The defense in this case has reminded you that the defendant is a firefighter many, many times. But uniforms do not change anatomy, and uniforms do not override medical evidence. This case is not about what Kevin West did as an occupation. This case is about what Kevin West did behind closed doors. Marcy's body tells us what happened to her, his phone tells us why, and when you put all of it together, there is only one conclusion that fits every piece of the evidence. Marcy was killed by vascular strangulation at the hands of her husband. The law requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt, not proof beyond all doubt, and the standard has been met. On behalf of the state of Washington, we ask that you return the only verdict consistent with the evidence in this particular case, and that is guilty on both counts. Thank you.